What is going on? If you are in a sales position, you're a business owner or whatever, and you want to cold call, but you have a fear of cold calling, you can't get yourself to pick up the phone, you get nervous when you're about to call, you start sweating, your heart starts racing, you start going through your head, oh, you're going to fail, they're not going to like you, you can't do this. That is going to stop you from making a lot of money. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how to overcome that. And on top of that, I'm going to teach you how to crush it with cold calling. When I started cold calling, I had the same exact problem. I was about to make my first call, and I would get overwhelmed with fear, anxiety, and I have my notebook right here. I would write about what I'm feeling and how I can get over the fear, and I go for walks and runs. Finally, I made the call. I got into it. I learned a lot. In the last month, I booked dozens of meetings through cold calling. I think my last campaign had like a 9% meeting book rate of dials, which is probably, I know I'm bragging here, but the point is, I know I think I know what I'm talking about now when it comes to cold calling. Still a lot to learn, don't get me wrong, but I want to share with you what I've learned so far so you can get to that next step. Even if you're not booking meetings like crazy, at least you can get to the point where you can make your first call, because even that can be a big achievement for someone, right? So we're going to get into that. We're going to give you 5 tips on how to overcome your fear of cold calling and how to crush it. Before I jump in, if you want a lead generation training document that teaches you exactly how to generate leads on autopilot in the fastest, most efficient, and effective way possible for cold email and cold calling, I have a link down below in the description that can teach you how to do that. A series of step-by-step videos I don't share anywhere else. It's made me hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales, my students as well. I highly recommend you grab that. Okay, let's jump in. First thing you need to ask yourself, what are you afraid of? Like, ask yourself, honestly, what is the worst that can happen when you make these calls, okay? I've been cursed at, I've been hung up on, I've been told not interested, I've said someone leave them alone, right? Great. That's literally all that happened. Nothing else has happened. I haven't died. I haven't lost my job. I haven't lost any money. No one cares or even thinks about me again, right? You need to understand that these people are so busy and they get so many calls that they don't care. Like, people, human beings are so focused on ourselves. We think the world revolves around us so much to the point where we think everyone else will notice. Like, I was dancing at a wedding the other day in my new suit. I ripped my pants right down the back and my butt. And I was at first so worried that everyone was noticing my pants being ripped. No one noticed unless I told them, because they're so focused on themselves, they don't notice anything else. The point is, don't think that these people are going to care that much. The worst thing that can happen to you is they hang up the phone. And life goes on. You're not going to care about it in 6 months from now. You're not going to care about it in 6 years from now. You're going to look back and laugh probably the next day or an hour after that, whatever. The point is, once you actually ask yourself and even write it down, take out a pen and paper, what is the worst thing that can happen on this cold call? And make a list of all the bad things that can happen, right? And you'll realize it's all nothing. It's emotional. It's an emotional reaction, a fear of rejection. Because we used to live in these small tribes, hunter-gatherers. So if we were weird socially, we'd become an outcast and we could die. But now there's so many billions of people around the world that it doesn't matter anymore. But that primal instinct is still wired in our brain. So make a list of all the downsides of cold calling, of what could happen that could go wrong. You'll realize it's nothing. And then make a list of all the things that you could gain from cold calling, and you'll realize you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. So do that, and you'll be able to embrace the no, which is my next tip. You need to go for no. What do I mean by this? There's a sales trainer, a famous sales trainer. Unfortunately, his name slips my mind right now. He's an older gentleman. And he said he would tell his guys to try and get the most amount of no's they could in a day. And he would have his entire sales team have a competition to see who could get the most no's in a single day. Sounds counterintuitive, right? Why would you want to get a no? Don't you want to make a sale? Don't you want to get a yes? Of course you do. But if you are only focused on the yes and you can't take the no and the rejection stings, it's going to be very hard to perform. But if you embrace the no, if you go after the no, the more no's you get, eventually you're going to get to a yes, right? If you just keep going, you're okay with no, you're outcome independent, you don't care, you will get to yes. If you need the yes to feel validated, you're not going to be able to do it. So you need to have the no. You need to accept the possibility of being told no and embrace it. And when you go for no, you can turn it into a numbers game. Now, I'm not saying there's a thing in sales, is it quality or quantity, right? I think it's both. And so what do I mean by that? Yes, it needs to be a quality call. You're not going to book a meeting if you don't use the right tonality and you don't, ask for the meeting. You have to actually ask for the meeting. You have to ask for the order. If you don't ask, you will not receive, right? You have to conduct yourself properly on the sales call, of course. But you should never judge your performance on any single call, right? Because some people are having a bad day and they hang up on you. Some people are not interested. They're not the right fit, right? It's a numbers game. You have to make a bunch of calls before you can decide if your strategy or your script or whatever is broken. At that point, you should. If you make one phone call and you get a no or even a yes, you shouldn't judge that one phone call and then use it to judge your entire strategy. 50 calls, 100 calls, then you can say, okay, what's my connection rate to the decision maker? How many gatekeepers do I get past on average? What percent is that? What's my conversion rate when I talk to a decision maker? And over the course of 50 calls to 100 calls, if you have a 0% conversion rate on anything, you probably are doing something wrong. But if you have like a 5% meeting book rate on dials, you make $100, you get 5 phone calls, 5 booked meetings. Not too bad, not too shabby. So it's a numbers game. Yes, you need to have the quality as part of that, but ultimately you just need to pick up the phone and make some dials. The next thing I want to say is what you say is not as important as how you say it. So this means tonality. This means taking pauses when you speak. This means speaking slowly. And I was not speaking so slowly before in this video. So you can tell, like, I need to work on that, right? Slowing down a bit. But the point is, your tonality is everything, okay? If someone answers the phone and they're like, hey, how's it going? You probably want to match that. If they're like, hey, then I would also just say, hey, it's Jacob. Like, match their levels, match their tone. Taking pauses when you speak. So when I give my elevator pitch for X27, I say, like, in the last 5 years alone, we've generated over $100 million in sales. That was super fast, and I like slowed it all together. If I instead say, over the last half decade alone, we've generated over 100 million in closed business for our clients, right? That's much more impactful. So your tonality and also the way you say something. Let me give you an example. If I say, yeah, sure. It's very enthusiastic, right? If I say, sure, like, yeah, sure. That's like, I'm not excited at all. So even though it's the exact same word, it has a totally different meaning. And this is especially important when you're on the phone with somebody because they can't see your face. And most communication is nonverbal. It's body language. It's tonality. It's these things that we pick up on without even realizing it, right? So if the person can't see you, all they can do is hear you and hear how you're feeling and hear how they should feel. So your tone on the phone, didn't mean to rhyme, I can do it anytime, has a giant impact on how the other person will receive what you're saying. So it's important that you use the right tonality. On that note, you also never want to rush the call. If the call feels rushed, Trent Dressel says this a lot. He's got a great channel about cold calling. If the call feels rushed, it's you who are rushing it. Meaning, if someone's like, yeah, I'm in a meeting, gotta get off the phone. If you just say, like, that's not gonna work. You can say, oh, great, we're going to a meeting. When can I call you back instead, right? Just keep calm, control the pace. You are always in control of the sales process as a salesman. If you're not in control of the sales process, it is your responsibility to take that control back. So know how to speak at the right speed, when to speed up, when to slow down, when to talk a lot, when to pause, when to have an upward inflection or a downward inflection. These are all things you need to know when you're cold calling. And lastly, at the end of the day, if you want to get over your fear of cold calling and get better at cold calling, you need to pick up the phone and dial, right? Ultimately, you can do everything you want. You can meditate, you can do this, you can do that. If you don't actually pick up the phone and make the call, you're not going to get anywhere. And ultimately, this is what you need to do. You need to just count down from 3, press dial, and everything else will figure itself out. Once the person answers the phone, you go from there. Just press dial. I used to, when I was younger, I don't do this anymore because I'm not really interested in this anymore, but when I was younger in my teenage years, I would go and approach girls, okay? That's what I would do. I wanted to go out with girls. Again, I don't do it anymore, but this was past Jacob. So I would go up and I would just approach women and I had never met before in the middle of the day and say hello, right? And maybe this is why I like cold calling, because it's kind of a similar concept of just cold approach. But anyway, when I would see a girl I wanted to talk to, immediately, if you're a guy, which most of my viewers are, you can relate to this. If you see a pretty girl, you kind of get like nervous, or you get like, oh, should I talk to her? What should I say? And you start going through your head of all these possible outcomes of rejection, and that's the thing that keeps you from going up. It's the same with cold calling. It's the fear of rejection, the fear of loss, the fear of embarrassment. But again, like cold calling, at the end of the day, worst case scenario is it doesn't work out, or it does work out. You don't know. But what I would do is, when I saw a girl I wanted to talk to, I would literally just do this. I would say, okay, I would imagine my family was tied up, and if I didn't go and talk to this girl, they would get kicked off of a building or something. I don't know, just something terrible. And I would say, okay, Jacob, you've got 3 seconds to start walking over there, or else your whole family's gonna die. This is a terrible thing to think, and now that I say it out loud, maybe I shouldn't, but that's what I would do. So the point is, I would say, okay, 3, 2, 1, and then I would just start walking towards the girl. And once I was walking in my head, I was like, oh no, and I would just get so. But then I go up and just say hello, and then from there, the rest of the conversation took care of itself. The hardest part of cold calling, of approaching girls, I don't want to get into girls. Back to cold calling. The hardest part of cold calling is getting through that initial fear, getting through the fire of the fear of embarrassment. If you can step through that, if you can get yourself to just press dial and call, you're good to go. And after your first call, you'll realize, wow, that wasn't so bad. And you can keep dialing. You can turn it into a numbers game. You can speak properly. You can go for the no. And you'll realize there's nothing to be afraid of. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you want the lead generation training document, please grab it down below in the description. It will help you tremendously. And let me know, do you like cold calling or cold email better, and why, in the comments below. See you next time. Peace.